Welcome to the Design Build Institute of America's first Design Build Delivers podcast of the new year. Each month, we talk to design build pros, owners, and successful teams about the best ways to harness the power of design build. This year, we've got a terrific lineup of guests planned, and we're also happy to welcome our sponsor, Georgia Pacific Gypsum, to the Design Build Delivers team. I'm Kim Wright at DBIA's national headquarters. We're going to kick off the year busting some design build myths. You've heard this one before, right? You can't really deliver spectacular design with design build. Well, wrong. Today we'll meet a team that harnessed Design Build's collaborative power to deliver the nation's Design Excellence Award-winning project, the Elson S. Floyd Cultural Center at Washington State University. Meet Rich Wells with Absher Construction Company, Mark Sindell and Don Caffrey with GGLO Design. When you first took on this job, which had so much potential, and it's got so many different parties involved and so many dreams and aspirations for this particular cultural center, where do you start? I mean, how do you start something like this? Let's start with Rich and then Mark, followed by Don.
Well, I think when we made the decision to team with GGLO and the other design partners, and knowing what this project meant to the university, we decided we had several meetings that were just like getting to know you type of meetings. We spent a lot of time talking about what the project meant to individual team members and how they thought that a project like this would impact them. That's not always typical at the start of a project. It's usually more, nuts and bolts of how are we going to do this? What are the steps in the design process we have to get through? So I think from the very beginning, because the project was unique, and we all kind of recognize that, we spent a lot of time more getting to know each other as a team and kind of collaborating on what the project meant to us before how are we going to actually take the project on.
Well, and adding to that, this was a traditional design build, one of the first round that WSU was doing, and they're really leading it with the University of Washington and Washington State and getting that established. And we recognize the importance and the depth of the project. So we usually, when we team up in these design build projects, we have all these ideas in the first proprietary meeting. We come out of the gate to really come in and say, here's what we're thinking. And we thought, if we guess, we're not going to go deep enough, we're going to get it wrong. So let's actually do a bunch of research, as Rich said, do a bunch of teaming work so that we really understand what questions to ask. And let's come in without any of that, with total open minds, and ask the right questions and really understand what's at the heart of what's necessary. And there was a pretty robust steering committee by WSU that was a cross-section of folks. And so we actually came into that feeling really good about that decision. And it took a lot to hold back. They were very nervous. They said, well, wait a minute. You guys didn't prepare. Yeah. You didn't, we expected more. And we said, and Dan Absher was really good about this, just wait, just trust us and let the process play out. And we didn't quite second guess ourselves, but we almost did, right?
Because it started with each meeting. The first meeting was us sort of pulling information from them and getting to really understand. And that made them really nervous because they had spent the past 6-8 months with a program architect coming up with the program for the building. And they thought we weren't getting there. They didn't understand that what we were doing is trying to find out the meaning behind the program. And so in the second meeting, we got closer and we had sort of these were 3 proprietary meetings. The second meeting, we had more design to show them, but we even gave them lots of designs and started editing them on the fly in the meeting. And that also scared them a lot. But we got a lot of information from them and we worked with them because we got really to not just what they had said, but why they had said it. So that really got us to where we could help the university because they are the experts at their program and their building, not us. We're experts at designing and constructing.
But they'd probably never had that happen, ever,
no,
right?
Yeah, many other teams come in off the gate and say, we have a great idea. We looked at your program. Here's what we're going to,
this is what we have to offer.
What do you think?
Period.
Right.
And that works normally because you're working in a framework of relatively traditional, predictable buildings. Mm-hmm. And we all know what it's going to look like. And we realized with what they were asking, what the students were asking, what the program was really demanding in Elson Floyd's vision, this was not going to look like much of what was out there.
They were asking us to push that because there's a lot of other buildings that not everything on a campus needs to be an icon, right? Not everything fits in that way. It's not always appropriate. But this is the one where they said it's right at the front door. We're sort of marking the big change we've done, and we really needed to stand out and show that.
And
not
the
just
cultural
be,
connection.
Yeah, not
too.
just be different, but be appropriate and show the things we haven't been showing before.
Go
I
ahead.
think that proprietary process actually, as painful as it was early and them not quite sure what was going on with it, at the end of it, built trust. So we spent a lot of time on the 2 of the 3 legs of the stool on the design and construction side, building the trust between us. Because going into something like that, knowing that we're kind of approaching it in a non-traditional way, it's a little nerve-wracking. We kind of had to trust each other that this was going to work, and we're all on board with this process. Once we got through it, it brought them on as kind of that third leg, trusting the process, which made the rest of the design process work really well. So,
And the conclusion of that, or near the conclusion of that, WSU had a really amazing project manager and owners rep in Kelly Keene, and she had put together this steering committee, which really fell into place well with this approach, even though they didn't know it at the time. I think she probably
You had
did.
to convince them it was going to work, but
But
yeah.
at some point in the middle of the process, I'm talking to Rich and I'm thinking, okay, we're getting there, but we're not quite there yet. So we need to pull up and push ourselves a little harder. So I still remember calling Rich saying, all right, it's Hail Mary time. We need to push ourselves to get over it. Are you ready for something a little out of the box? And what did you say?
I don't know if I can repeat the words
Yeah.
I may have,
And
may have
that's your
said at the
classic
time.
design build conversation,
Well, and that
right?
we could have those at 7 at night, right? And this is the beauty of design build. We were partners in trying to accomplish something together. So we were pushing ourselves in problem solving rather than in a traditional method. That conversation wouldn't have happened, and it wouldn't have happened in that kind of immediate way.
And you wouldn't have had that outcome.
And the university had asked for that too. They said this because there's a validation process that happened afterwards. So the selected team would go through and validate the design with the option, if things fell apart, to then go to another competitor in the design build competition. So they said, come up with a design, come up with the concept, really give us the idea of what you're going to give us. And then during the validation phase, we can lock it down. And you should be pretty sure you can do it. But during the validation phase, you can adjust the dials and make sure that, and we can confirm, because program lists often very long things that said, oh, well, that thing that we said was important isn't really that important. So you don't have to do that, but put the money back over here, right, to do the thing you asked for. So we had that opportunity during validation to, really almost a schematic. Validation was essentially heavy schematic design to design development, where we sat down and we had talked to a lot of folks before, but we brought in vendors, we brought in installers at that point, especially with the complex roof. We had fabricators involved, and we all sat down to make sure that we could do it. We didn't know exactly everything, but we knew that we could do it. Each team would say, yes, I can do that, and we would have an allowance and say within that allowance.
On this project, it was important to really be dialed in on the architecture of it, because the location of this project was not any part of their master plan. So there was no infrastructure, there was nothing there. So this isn't a huge dollar project or square footage project. And in order to get the building to sit where Dr. Floyd wanted it to sit, we had to spend a larger proportion of the dollars to get infrastructure over to make the project work. So that gave us less on the architecture side. So it even forced us more to dial in how we were going to approach this, to do something that was as iconic as they were looking for, and at the same time, be able to juggle the budget challenges of, a higher percentage of infrastructure going in than you would typically see on a ground-up building like that. So,
yeah. And in a building of this design emphasis, you don't want to bury all the money. I mean, it's important. All those factors are important to be done right, but they just, at the end, they just work. They don't appear.
This is where being a podcast really kind of stinks, because you can't see what we're talking about. I mean, you have to see this building. So let's describe this building, if we can, in the best way that we can. It's spectacular. I mean, I'll say that. And even you don't have to say it. I'll just say it. It is a spectacular building. It's beautiful. But when people first see this building, what are they saying? How are they describing it to you? Mark, and then Don, why don't you start that one off?
Well, we'll talk a little bit about intent behind it, and then we'll talk about what we hear. So the intent was really this notion of inward sharing out, which came from the students. And the students said, really, it should be inward sharing out. the building and the project should be representative of its purpose, and it should be non-Western in its form in order to be more inclusive to a broader range of folks. So we really latched onto that a fair amount. And then there was this underlying importance of the indigenous Nez Perce and paying homage to them and respecting the fact that this was really their land that was taken from them. And so when you combine those things, we did a bunch of research and we found the notion of pit houses and communal shelter and really unwound that to its core, which is the Nez Perce had communal shelter lightly draped on the native landscape that they subsisted on in a really positive relationship with the land. And so we tried to take that and use contemporary form to bring that out. So the inward sharing out was that the core of the space was the living room for cultural events, and then the roof was this enveloping shelter that branched out and connected to the outside, and that the walls would open up, the building would undulate with the land, and then we would do a native Palouse Prairie landscape and restore some of the endangered native Palouse species among that. And then the whole thing would really bring forward the philosophical notions of the Nez Perce, but in a truly contemporary, technical way. And so the building really emerged out of form, function, use, resourcefulness. It was not an aesthetic or a frivolous or an applied approach. That's sometimes misunderstood from folks. But for the most part, what we hear from folks is just one word, whether they're walking in it for the first time or driving by it for the first time or walking by it for the first time. And that's wow, which we were thrilled because we were all terrified, right?
Yeah, well, and it really, we looked at it and we, the focus of the space was the sort of living room and the knowledge rooms. These essentially the main gathering space and the four rooms off of them that formed sort of this, in thought you would think that it should be in a circle. The site is long and narrow and built on top of basalt. So there was not room to be circular, so there was more of an elliptical shape. So essentially brought that form together. And then there was a large commercial kitchen on the other end because a lot of sharing about culture is food. And so a lot of the space works in that realm. Out of a 16,000 square foot building, 1,000 square foot was a kitchen. And then the other end were the offices for the people who ran the building. So we essentially had these three spaces. And then we took the idea of that central space being there and placing them on the landscape in a way that used universal design principles by draping it through and just allowing it to ramp down to the different levels and just connect and flow through the building. And then we took that form and covered it. And essentially, for all of the complexity of it, it is that sort of elliptical shape, two pieces at the end anchoring it. And then the roof itself, for looking very complex, while it was difficult to build because it's tricky and non-traditional, the actual shape itself is the top of a torus, just a donut shape. And we cut it around and aligned it and angled it to fit that so that all of those beams on there, while they're cut to different lengths and different heights and shapes, they are all the same radius. So it was, we were trying to be as efficient as possible with covering and form. So it's really that sort of, for all of the complexity you see in the end, is those three forms covered by a unifying roof.
And Elson Floyd's vision is in part really forward about commonalities of culture and focusing on that, but then providing deep diving knowledge through learning of the individual culture. So there was this duality of commonalities of cultures and individual cultures. We found these core values that were commonalities among the cultures. One of them was resourcefulness, which gets to some of the things Rich was saying. And I think one of the things that we're proud of is the interior. We really decided let's use structure as finished to maximize the value.
That was the mantra.
That was the mantra.
From almost the earliest meetings we had, because we knew that's the best way we could utilize the budget dollars we had. And it fell in line with the cultural aspect of the building to not be overly ornate and Western. So it actually worked out extremely well. And it was a factor in maintaining that limited budget that we had, particularly with the other factors.
And what that led to as well, when you walk in, the glue lamps were there for a reason. It wasn't a decorative thing. It's the structure of the building. The large volume had a purpose based on the events, the large operable glass facades, the concrete floors. Because it was just an honest space, there's something primal about it. So when folks walk in, they get the same feeling as walking into an old cathedral, and it's fun to watch them. They just stop for a moment, and it has an emotional impact, which is where we were coming from the very beginning, but just building methodically towards that. And when you do that, you never know exactly if you're going to get to that level.
Because we looked at everything, and normally in a project you make sure, okay, everything has to have a reason and a purpose. Get rid of everything that doesn't. We tried to make sure in this project that everything would have 2 or 3 reasons and purposes to be there and functions. It was everything, there was nothing that could be taken out at the end, because everything, if you took one thing out, you had to replace it with something else, because it was already doing that many jobs. And things that look like they were done just to be crazy, but we couldn't have spanned those spaces in wood with a different species of wood. For example, we used a regional species, Port Orford cedar, and if we had tried to do that in a less expensive wood in, say, a Doug fir, the wood would have been too heavy, and we would have spent more, and we would have not been able to span the spaces. So it was actually the most appropriate wood as well, the most weather resistant for being on the outside of the building. So there were a lot of things that were design decisions for aesthetic reasons and for sort of the mission of the building that were also very practical reasons, and they, it all tied together really well. And that was part of having the whole team together, because we could look at what we were doing for the form of the building, and then talk to the companies that were going to be delivering the glulam beams on sites, for knowing how long they could be and how it tied together. We had we're very lucky to have a young person on the team who was working in programs called Rhino and Grasshopper. So we would have all of these parts, these variables for design, things they asked for us, were built into the model, so that when the client would say, we need the tail end of each of those beams to be at least 12 foot off the ground so that students don't climb on them. And so we would put that parameter in, it would slightly change the shape of the building. And we would say things about where we could put connections, because, the truck could only haul a beam of certain length, and that would help change the shape of the building. And so that we could react to them in real time and show them what that meant.
Yeah, logistics were taken into account in design, which is another benefit of the design build process, where they're talking about those things, because it would have been easy for them to have picked some other element and we can't get it onto the site. It doesn't
even make it there. Yeah.
Great design builders are all about innovation, integration, and efficiency. That's why we're happy to have Georgia Pacific Gypsum as our Design Build Delivers partner. The DENS element barrier system with AquaCore technology from Georgia Pacific Gypsum creates the water-resistive and air barrier within, eliminating the need for an additional on-site crew to apply a separate WRB-AB. This innovative product provides a high-performance integrated sheathing solution for architects concerned with preserving the integrity of their building designs, and offers contractors better control of their project schedules and potential time savings.
This could not have been a more collaborative process. I mean, truly, from the before you even started thinking about the actual building itself. And yet, we still hear the knock that you can't have design excellence in design build.
We couldn't have done this design without design build. I think we would have turned something in. It might have looked something like this. Someone would have come in and told us why we couldn't do it later, because we would have not taken those things into account, and we would have not had nearly as good of a building. So there was essentially it's a design build project, so we had a set cost, but for all of that, we crammed a lot of value into that cost that I don't think we could have done in a design bid build environment, or even a
negotiating GMP. Yeah.
And this was Elson Floyd's pretty strong, aggressive vision, which he was pretty famous for, and he made amazing moves on that campus. He was gone, and it was up to us and WSU to perpetuate this, and this was a very non-standard approach. And we were challenged every step of the way. Very thoughtful, smart people who were willing to embrace it if they could test us and make sure that it was authentic and responsible. Mm-hmm. And if we hadn't gone through this in the design build realm and worked so closely together, this never would have made it over those several challenges. But we had such confidence and depth, and it was so authentic, and it was technically so sound because we had these conversations early. We were able to really get it over the hump. And every time we had these conversations, folks came out completely endorsing the project and becoming strong advocates for it. And that was
originally people had been skeptics.
You wouldn't believe what we went through, and every person came through the other side.
And they have standards, and they have pragmatists that have different parts that they have to maintain, and so those sometimes can clash with original design, particularly on a campus that has more of a traditional standard design parameter around their entire campus. We had to sell them on it, and part of the sell was not just an architectural idea, but also we had, we're sort of the pragmatists of
team.
that team, right? And so we could relate with them and help assure them that, yes, we understand that you're not used to seeing this, but I think with this, and this, and some of our partners on the build side, we were able to bring them in and help them validate to, say the mechanical guy and have him have confidence in that the system was going to work, things like that. So the process, I agree that I don't know that we could have done this any other way but through design build.
I think the other overlay to this too is that we always talk about design build and teaming and all this stuff, but really when we were hearing from the students and from the faculty and from the steering committee, it was all about breaking cultural barriers down that we'd all kind of got accustomed to as a society, and really honoring and respecting each other and understanding each other's points of view, listening carefully and just slowing down a little bit. And we said, well, the way we can help WSU translate this into built form in a way that's truly authentic in a process that's going to result in something, we really have to live that among the team. So I think we tried to practice that, which opens some doors of collaboration and understanding beyond what's normally done even in design build. And that's reflective of the outcomes and how we were able to stay ahead of the process as well.
Actually living the way that
Exactly,
they wanted
yeah.
to honor, the
And-
building was meant to honor.
Yeah.
And they did, in fact, also they pushed us to say this is a building to represent a large amount of the community of the campus that hasn't been represented before. They're already here. It's not to attract people who aren't there. They're already here. But they also didn't want to turn the backs to the larger community in the region. It's rural Eastern Washington, largely agrarian economy, and there's a lot of history there too. So we looked at the building in encompassing while it's representing cultures who are underrepresented and providing a welcoming space for them, it was also providing cues for the rest of the community that while it wasn't a red brick building of the Washington State University campus, its form was similar to the rolling hills of the Palouse and the surrounding landscape. It was using familiar materials that sort of linked to the agrarian culture. That there's a standing seam roof. All the rock around the area is basalt. So the the veneer on the building is basalt. There's the board form concrete, which is very similar to a lot of barn structures and things in the area. So it immediately was visibly recognizable to people in the area who said, "Oh, it looks like the Palouse. Oh, those are materials I know. Like these are, and the plantings are regional plantings. Like this is a building of our area."
Which does get to the heart of the whole idea that design build is not a static. It's evolved, it's grown. I mean, we see in the awards processes every year, we see things. Oh, did you see what they did? I mean, you take the design build done right, basic best practices, and then you take it a whole extra level because a team found a way to do something even better than you could ever put in a primer. And that triple bottom line, actually impacting your community, the things that are more than just cost and schedule. That's what happens when you have a really high functioning team.
Well, and Rich was able to bring on a lot of, Rich and his project manager were able to bring on a lot of good subcontractors early. And normally as an architect, when I'm out in the field, I always feel a little shy because sometimes the trades are, they're grumpy at those architects. But every time we went out in the field, it was such a collaborative environment, including all the guys out standing in the rain and the snow building this thing. They would come in and thank us and say what a great project this was, and it was really cool, and ask us questions about the design and tell us problems. And we banter back and forth questions with the full team, and they'd bring us out, show us stuff they were proud of. We had the fire suppression guy, the sprinkler guy. He was walking around showing us these cool ways he'd come up with to run the sprinkler pipe in the right way so it would look really good. That's not something I have ever had happen on a project.
There was a sense of pride and purpose down through every person on the project, down through the trades, you name it. And there's already the Go Coug sort of, mantra and pride, but this added another level. And we were we invited folks to events. We were very clear about the intent and the purpose of the project, and we communicated that frequently in the vision. We didn't just stow that away after schematic design. That was perpetuated, and there was such an immense amount of buy-in. I mean, to Don's point, Absher had an exceptional team, but we went out on site and we said, wow, this looks fantastic. We pretty much don't need a punch list. And the superintendent said, well, you don't know, but I did that and ripped that out 3 times before you got here because I didn't think it was good enough. And we thought, wow, that is...
Yeah, I think a call out to Steve Sanislow on this project.
Yes, our superintendent did a phenomenal job. Our project manager, the whole team. We had a fantastic team, and the whole collaborative approach trickled to everyone on the team. Both Steve and Aaron are our superintendent and project manager, and they participated from the very beginning as well.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like, hey, we're going to do all this work and then hand it off to a project team who hadn't been part of.
The project engineer was in the very early proprietary meetings.
Mm-hmm.
And those relationships really went deep.
In a project like this, there are a lot of constraints, and design build is often set upon constraints because you're given an RFP and they're written in there. But if you have the whole team together and working well together, you're more creative by having those restraints. So
Forces innovation you didn't even know you needed.
right, because when someone hands you a blank piece of paper, you're just going to draw the thing you drew last week.
And everyone really wanted to respect and honor Elson Floyd and Elson Floyd's vision. He had done so much for the university and the community that there was this sense of responsibility. And I think one of the more touching moments was when his widow, Carmenta Floyd, was in the building for one of the first times, and we talked to her and said, did we do it justice? And she was very prideful and said, I don't think he would have ever imagined that little sketch that he did and putting this out there would result in this. So he's up there smiling somewhere, and that was the whole thing was worth it for that 30-second conversation. Actually,
we were constantly afraid that what we were doing was being done in the wrong way because we were trying to respect people who we weren't, and we were trying to learn from them but not take from them, and it was points where when we went and visited the tribal community and we were showing them the design, and it was very. We were treading very lightly, being like, we want to be respectful. Is this getting there? And in the middle of the meeting, one of the tribal leaders stopped and said, there's a meditation pavilion. It's a small room for contemplative space right outside the building. And it's the sort of flower-shaped one with the Corten metal panels on the side. And they said, what do you think? And they said, well, in that meditation room, is there any space, say, in the floor? You put a hole in there. And we said, maybe. What's up? And he said, well, there's a place that's a place that's sacred to us that up in the hills where it's we really it's where we make our some of our spiritual connection. Do you think it would be okay if you could put like a small hole in the floor there, and we could take some of the soil from there and put it there to connect these two things? And so, that wouldn't be our wildest dreams, because we were just hoping that we weren't insulting them with this point. That we were, given the long history of the Native American community in this country, we were, we may not always know what we're doing comparatively. So the fact that they embraced it and then wanted to participate was really more than we could have ever hoped
for. Taking that further, we added Nakia Williamson Cloud to the team, Nez Perce artist and designer, and he was with us really most of the design development and delivery phase. And we had Judith Caldwell, an artist, and we collaborated on how to bring art in a really sensory, tactile way to everyone visiting the project to the forefront and tell these really amazing spiritual stories of the Nez Perce through metaphors and references and built form on a level of craft. And that was pretty amazing. He kept us honest too. He kept reminding us, what was his statement? He kept telling me, remember, the land doesn't belong to us, we belong to it. So you got to keep that in your mind in this approach, right? Because we've changed over time so much and become disconnected that even our thinking, we had to be reminded constantly of that. And I think that if you get a chance to go experience it, the art is really another level that connects visitors on an emotional
And even Judith's work was design build. Judith didn't just come up with designs and hand them off. Judith has her own foundry and does her own casting work. So she was contracted directly through Absher, not through us, because she was a design build installer, essentially, of her artwork. So, and it's not a lot of projects I work on where the art is involved directly through the contractor, and even the other aspects where we purchase the rights from various artists to display their art on the knowledge room doors. We worked very carefully with the producers of who'd be reproducing the art and how they would be going on these doors that for all of their very fancy look were wood panel garage doors. And that was, the art was very much part of that design build process. Everything, I don't think there was a single part of this thing that we sort of just threw off a sketch and said, here you go, let us know how it works.
Thanks so much to the Elson S. Floyd Cultural Center Design Build team for giving us a glimpse into this terrific project. But if you're still not convinced Design Build can deliver exceptional design, please take a moment and look at the photos and video of this DBIA National Award winner. Go to the project's awards page on our website at dbia.org. We're also just weeks away from opening up the entry process for this year's National Design Build Project Award competition. But why wait? You can get a head start now by adding your project into the Design Build Projects database. Then, if you want to enter the awards competition, you've already built the foundation for your entry. Thanks again to our sponsor, Georgia Pacific Gypsum, for being a valued member of our Design Build Delivers podcast team. We hope you will all join us again next month when we'll talk about specialty contractors and the difference they can really make on successful design build teams.